billboard ads. Do these things work? This is something that I think a lot of people in a lot of SaaS B2B companies, at some point they're thinking about how do they grow faster, maybe how do they build a brand, and they start talking about offline ads, right? Let's talk about that. What are offline ads in general? Offline really talks about everything. They'll call it like OOH, out of home. It's really anything. It could be anything from, like I said, a billboard ad to a bus wrap to a train wrap to literally magazines, newspapers. It's anything that's not online. Billboards, I think, generate a lot of discussion and controversy because they're very prominent. You're driving by, you're looking at it. Everyone has strong opinions on this, right? And that's marketing in general, right? Everybody in the company has a strong opinion. If something you're doing in marketing works or not, or maybe they're like, it doesn't work for me, or I think that's a waste of money. And it is. It's a lot of money on these campaigns. Not necessarily a waste of money, but let's talk about that. You're spending serious dollars and you want to understand, does this stuff work? So my mentality going into this was always like, hey, we should measure this stuff, right? Marketing should not just have a blank check and spend a ton of money and not even know if it works or not. Because I think that creates a lot of ill will towards marketing. And a lot of people get skeptical in marketing because I think they have seen marketing teams burn through a lot of cash and not show a lot of results for it. And so I've always been kind of a very metric driven from that standpoint. Hey, let's measure these things. And before I was at Salesforce and Zendesk and Slack, I was in the consumer side of the world, right? So I spent about 10 years on the B2C side. And in the B2C side, you would use a lot more of these tactics. You just do a lot more advertising in general. So you did a lot more online, you did a lot more offline, and you would measure this stuff a lot more. I think sometimes with B2B, for whatever reason, companies tend to adopt a very old playbook, just because, hey, this is how B2B works, right? You do top-down sales, you run events, you buy steak dinners, and you only sell to the enterprise. And so as SaaS comes out and it really starts revolutionizing everything from a product standpoint, the go-to-market also starts to change. And you start using a lot of tactics that maybe companies on the B2C side would. And advertising, and even offline advertising, is one of those things. And so you have a lot of B2B companies and people and CEOs and VCs that are like, does this stuff work or not? So generally, the way I've thought about measuring it is, first off, let's start off. You want to always be measuring your pipeline metrics, right? So that's everything, your total funnel metrics. You want to think about, visitors, leads, MQLs, SQLs, pipe, closed business, right? And you want to be able to target that, by geography, by segment. You want to understand those different trends. Most SaaS companies, in my experience, do a pretty good job at this. Now, the next area you should be tracking, which a lot of companies aren't, are the brand metrics side of the house. So you want to be measuring things like aided recall and unaided recall, things like sentiment, share of voice, share of conversation. I'm not going to go into how to track those on this particular video, but there's a lot of ways to do it. You can do surveys, you can do different methods. There's online software that'll help get a better feel for it. But, start tracking those brand metrics. And then here's the big thing. So once you've started, you want to go ahead, with an offline campaign, and maybe you buy some billboards as part of that. If you're in the Bay Area, you're thinking about Highway 101, there's a whole bunch of, billboards along there. The big thing is when you start creating that campaign, you don't want to do it everywhere. That's the biggest mistake I see a lot of marketers make when they go about a lot of these bigger campaigns that they embark on, is they run them everywhere. And the problem with that is it's really hard to tell if you had a lift or not. I mean, maybe, sales go up, maybe your awareness goes up, but then at the same time, maybe there was a big, thing in the economy. All of a sudden the economy started getting better, right? Or maybe, you launched a new product at the same time. And it's really tough to tease out, right? Like, did that work or did it not? And so the thing that I found really successful is to use control groups. So the idea behind a control group is, as opposed to running these billboards all over the US, let's say, you choose a very specific location, maybe a couple locations. So for instance, at Slack, when we were running kind of our first bigger awareness campaigns, we just said, hey, we're gonna test out offline. Really, same conversations, right? Does this work? Does this not? Well, let's test it, right? And so for instance, we ran offline ads in Denver, Seattle, and Austin. And then we would have 3 sister cities that were very similar to those cities where we didn't run any offline ads. We didn't run any campaign whatsoever. And then what we do is we'd run that campaign, we'd wait a couple months, run it, we'd look about saturation, frequency, we make sure that, those billboards were in locations where our customers were. And then we would measure the results, right? We would go, okay, did the awareness lift, right? Aided recall, unaided recall, sentiment, did that go higher? And not only that, how much higher did it go? Because a lot of times when you're in a fast growing startup, your awareness is naturally going up, right? A lot of times not as fast as you want it though. So a lot of times advertising and offline advertising and billboard advertising can be a way to help accelerate that growth even further. So we would say, let's say in those target cities that we ran this, maybe our aided awareness was 5%. And then we finished that campaign and now they're up to 10%. Great, right? But nationally, maybe we've gone from 5% to 6% just because we were growing anyway, right? So you had a 4-point lift. And you can say, hey, okay, that works, right? The really cool thing we found too is a lot of times we would go into these brand campaigns thinking like, hey, this is more about the brand side. We want to see if these brand metrics increase. But what we found was a lot of times the funnel metrics also increased. You did see, more leads. You saw more pipe coming in for those areas. And so the control groups are a really effective way to do it. You can leverage control groups in multiple ways. So a lot of times in B2B SaaS, you will be doing ABM campaigns because you're saying, hey, we're selling to the enterprise. We want to get into these target verticals, or we have, a name list of 50 accounts that we're really trying to sell into. And so ABM is just like, hey, we're going to leverage, content, ads, reverse IP when they show up at our homepage. We're going to give them, for customized content. Maybe it's customized GIFs, whatever it is, right? But that's a really good example. So maybe you're saying, hey, we want to do billboards, but we want to put them against all these targeted accounts. Like, where are they clustered? What cities? Where their main offices? Let's buy billboards around that. And, you can do that. But the thing is, though, as opposed to saying, hey, if you have 50 accounts, doing it towards all 50, just do it to half. Do it to 25 of them. Find out, like, maybe there's, the cluster of your top 50 accounts that you're targeting are in 7 cities, right? Well, just do it towards 3 cities, and then again, wait 2 or 3 months and then start to see, like, hey, for these accounts, how much more leads did we get? How much more pipe did we get? What was the deal velocity? Also, what a lot of times what happens too is, marketing sometimes, I think, wrongly is only looking at net new customers coming in. Well, you should be also thinking about your existing customers. What we found too is that when we run these campaigns, our existing customers tended to spend more. They tended to attrit less because, again, you're kind of affecting awareness. You're kind of affecting the sentiment. These campaigns, offline campaigns, and billboard campaigns, they're great for driving awareness for net new, but they're also really powerful for customers. So you want to measure that too. Again, for the customers in these areas that saw it, were they different than the customers who didn't see it? And so then you can take that mentality, right? Whether you're testing it against ABM, whether you're testing against specific geographies, start small. That's what we did. Start small and then slowly start expanding it, right? So for Slack, what we did is we started in those first couple cities, had some success, right? Saw that the numbers were going up and to the right. And then we said, okay, what if we did in like 10 cities? Okay, did it work better? Still getting really positive results. And then we even said, like, okay, what if we did it for US? Well, here's another thing too. You can still do that. Even if you're doing a nationwide campaign, you still have rest of world, right? If you're in SaaS, you're probably selling more than one country. And so what we did is we said, okay, well, US now is our target. Our control group is rest of world, right? They're not getting the campaign. And we're going to measure, all of our funnel metrics, where they're growing. We're going to measure all of our brand metrics, where are they going, right? And, after all those learnings, we basically got it to a level to where we can say, hey, a point of awareness cost us X dollars, right? If we need to generate this much more in pipe for a campaign like this, here's how much it would cost. So I think, let's get back to the original question. Do billboard ads work? In my experience, yes, they do.
Yes! Hell yeah! Hey, come on, baby! Come on! Yes! Come on! Ah!
Now, let me caveat that. With any campaign, it really depends on doing the hard work before you run the campaign, right? So do you really know who your customers are? Do you know the demographics, the psychographics, the firmographics? For these channels that you're doing, whether it's billboards or offline, where it's a bus wrap or you're doing a Wall Street Journal ad or whatever it is, like, is that where your audience is? Is that what the media that they're looking at? So the campaign itself has a big influence on it, right? The creative that you used, the messaging, did it inspire? Did people love it, right? Or was it just a direct demand gen ad, right? Was it just all offers, sign up now? That's not really a branding campaign. But again, you kind of have to think about like what these campaigns are. These campaigns also take a lot of time too, especially when you're starting to do these larger ones. Are you doing this in-house? Are you working with an agency? How many people are on this project? It takes time to review that. When you go to buy this media, that takes time, right? Like, you don't just buy it and, oh, that billboard's there tomorrow, right? Like, if you want to get some of the good ones or in the area, sometimes you have to buy these things 3-6 months out. And then sometimes the creative will take 3 or 6 months. So these are long-term initiatives initiatives. And of course, the cost, right? I think in a way, if you can kind of balance yourself and be almost channel agnostic and look at it more as an arbitrage game, right? Because sometimes offline gets billboarded, but oh, that's so old school, no one's using it. But then the prices come down to where it's like, well, that from a CPM perspective, that makes a lot of sense, right? Maybe that's more efficient than doing some of the other online channels you are, or maybe you do it in addition to it. So the big thing is, to kind of wrap up, I would say offline ads, billboard ads, they definitely have their place. You have to do the work of measuring the key metrics, having that in place. Ideally, before you run this campaign, it's like the first thing I did when I got there, I was the first marketing hire. I'm like, I want to start tracking these metrics because I want to have, January, February, March, April, May, and then we run the campaign, right? And then you have 5 points of steady data. So then when you see the campaign, you see the lift, you can point to that, right? You don't want to start tracking these literally the first month you run the campaign because you have no data, right? And anyone else that's going to look at this is going to be skeptical, right? And they should be, right? Whether you're a VC, you're on the board, whether you're CEO, whether you're CFO, whether you're head of sales, right? Everybody cares about, hey, are we spending our money efficiently? And you want to be able to prove it to them that, hey, this is working. And take your time with it, right? Too many marketers, you're going to want to just rush out and get this out quick and run it everywhere. And then it's really hard to measure for the reasons I mentioned earlier. So anyways, I think billboard ads do work. They have their place. Offline ads in general have their place. You got to do the hard work. But thanks for sticking around with this, and excited to go through more topics like this on SaaS growth, marketing, branding. Stay tuned for more videos. Thanks so much.